Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you've been well. Today we're going to be discussing jazz theory, and this will be part one of a two-part series I'm going to do as an introduction to jazz theory. Part one will be about modes and how chords function together or how they all interact with each other. So let's go check it out and learn something. Alright, before we get to the instrument, there's a few theoretical standpoints that we need to understand. The first is how a scale works and how you create chords from it. I've talked a little bit about this before, but this first scale here, we're dealing with the C major scale. So there's 7 notes. 1 is C, 2 is D, 3 is E, 4 is F, 5 is G, 6 is A, 7 is B, and then you're back to C again. The second section of those letters that you see that's just duplicated, those are going to be one octave higher, or they'll be the next register higher. So that's going to sound like this. Another thing I want to point out here really quickly is if you want to get the relative minor scale of the major scale that you're in, the easiest way to do that is to start on the 6th scale degree. So in this case, you're going to start on the A and use the same notes and actually the same chords later on. However, reorder everything to start on A. So A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, D would be 4, E would be 5, F would be 6, and G would be 7. And that would sound like this. The next slide here is how we construct chords from that scale. So we're going to take the root, or 1, the 3, and the 5. So the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the 5th note. And combining those 3 notes will give you what's called the triad. And in jazz, we usually go beyond the triad, and the first extension after the triad is the 7th. If you continue that idea of taking every other note or every third note, so that will give you the root of C, the third of E, the G, which is the 5th, and the 7th, which is B. So that would create a C major 7 chord. So if we continued that idea that if you wanted to add a 9th onto it, it would be the note D an octave higher, or the 11th would be the F above that, or the 13th would be the A above that. And that would give you the farthest extension that you can do without doubling a note in the chord. In a jazz, especially a jazz guitar perspective, we would never play that many notes together, and we actually can't play all of that together on the guitar. But it is possible to do that if you were playing arpeggios or playing, for example, the piano. Okay, so if we continue that idea of creating these 7th chords for every note in the scale, you get 7 different chords. And in a major key, this is the order that you're going to always find these quality of chords in. So this will be consistent for every key that you play in, as long as it's a major key. In the key of C, here we have our 1 chord as C major 7, our 2 chord as D minor 7, our 3 chord is E minor 7. Our 4 chord is F major 7. The 5 chord is G7, and we'll come back to that in just a second. The 6th chord is A minor 7. The 7th chord is a B minor 7 with a flat 5. That's also called a half diminished chord. And then you're back to your 1 chord of C major 7, but with the octave higher. So I want to back up to the 5 chord for a second. So I said it was a major chord, but a 5 chord in a major key like this has a flat 7 or a minor 7 instead of the normal major 7th. So that creates what's called a dominant 7th chord. So if you hear somebody say dominant 7th, or we'll refer to that a lot in these series as dominant 7th, that's what I'm talking about, is the 5 chord. So in this case it's G7, and those are going to sound like this: C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, C major 7. Alright, so now let's look at each chord a little more in depth and see the 4 notes we're dealing with specifically. So the C major 7, as we said, was C, E, G, and B. That gives you your root, major 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. D minor is D, F, A, and C, and on minor chord we have a root, a minor 3rd, a 5th, and a minor 7th. E minor is E, G, B, and D, and again that's root, minor 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. F major 7 is F, A, C, and E, and just like the C major 7, we have a root, major 3rd, 5th, major 7th. G7 is G, B, D, and F, and that gives you a root, 3rd, 5th, and minor 7th. So remember, on dominant 7ths we have a minor 7. A minor 7 is A, C, E, and G, and again that's going to give you the root, minor 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. Then B minor 7 flat 5 is B, D, F, A, which a half diminished chord on minor 7 flat 5 like this is the root, minor 3, then we have a flat 5 and a minor 7th. From there we're back to C major 7 again, just an octave higher. So as jazz musicians, we take this concept one step further and we explore what are called modes. A mode is taking a pattern, it can be either with a scale or with a rhythm, and just change where we start at, basically. So the major scale in this case, or what's called the Ionian scale in the mode term, is the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, like we've been discussing. That's going to be the first mode. The second mode would be taking those same 7 notes, however starting on D and then ending on D. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. That will give you the Dorian sound, for example, or the second mode. Each mode is going to have its own sound and own kind of color, so you would use them in different situations. You'll see written below the interval. Each interval is specific to that mode, so we would start on each root note, or the 1 for those intervals. So the major scale we've talked about, so I'm going to kind of scoot past that one a little bit, but Dorian is going to work over your minor 7th sounds. So that scale is going to have a flat 3 and a flat 7, and it will sound like this. Again, the Dorian sound is the main scale that we use in jazz over minor 7th chords, or your regular minor 7th chords. So moving on, Phrygian is the third mode, and that is from E to E. Again, those same 7 notes, and it's going to give you a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So again, it's got its own kind of flair. This scale is not as common as some of the others. However, you will hear it, or there is examples of it being used all over the place. Rush actually is a really good example of this kind of more progressive rock stuff, but it's also used in the jazz world a lot as well. But it sounds like this. The fourth mode is Lydian, and that is going to give you a sharp 4 or a sharp 11 sound. And the Lydian scale is also a major scale, so it's very similar to the Ionian scale except for that sharp 4 or sharp 11 sound. So this will work over any major 7, sharp 11 chords. You can also think of this as your progressive rock kind of sound, so like the Joe Satriani's and Steve Vai's kind of sound. But again, it's a very heavily used sound in the jazz world as well. So it sounds like this. Okay, so the fifth mode is the Mixolydian scale, which this scale is a major scale with a flat 7. So as you may have guessed, it's our go-to scale to play over dominant 7th chords. So this is kind of major key specific. I want to point that out. So it works over 5 chords in a major key. In a minor key, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we'll get to that later on in this lesson. But for right now, the Mixolydian sounds like this. The sixth mode is your Aeolian scale, and this is your natural minor scale. So I talked earlier about the relative major and minor. So C major is the same notes as A minor. This goes along with that. So again, your sixth mode is your natural minor scale, and this is going to give you a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So the difference between Aeolian and Dorian has the raised 6th or the major 6, and Aeolian has the flat 6 or the minor 6. So Aeolian sounds like this. Lastly, we have the Locrian scale, which is the 7th mode of the major scale. So this scale will give you a flat 2, a flat 3, a flat 5, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So this scale is what we're going to use over those half diminished chords, or the minor 7 with a flat 5 chords, or the 2 chord in a minor key. So it's going to sound like this. All right, now let's jump over to the guitar and see how all these fit on the instrument, and then we're also going to discuss how we apply these in a musical context. Okay, so now that we're zoomed in here, we're going to go through the modes on the guitar. And for these, I'm going to keep the same root note. So we're going to use C as a way to keep everything consistent and consistent with the rest of the video series that we've been doing. But this way too will also allow you to hear and see the differences between each mode a little bit easier. This is one way you can practice the modes. The other way is to stay in the same key, but play each mode off of each root note in the same key, like we talked about with the slide. So playing C Ionian, and then D Dorian, and then E Phrygian, and so on and so forth. For this example, again, we're going to stay on the same root note. So each scale is going to have the root note of C. And we're going to kind of gloss over Ionian, or the first mode, because again, up to this point, we've played it a lot. And if you're not familiar with it, go check out the video up here at the top about the introduction to major scales and my 6 fingerings for that scale. And what we're going to do with these modes is apply that mentality of how to use those fingerings for each mode. So Dorian is where we're going to start. So this is our 2 or our second mode of the major scale. And Dorian is your primary scale that you hear over minor chords in jazz music. So the Dorian scale is going to have your root of C, the same 2, which is D, as the major scale. But then we have a flat 3, which implies the minor tonality, and that's E flat. Then F is our perfect fourth, or our normal fourth, like in the major scale. G is our fifth, or the same fifth. Then A is the major sixth, or the same sixth as the major scale. And that's what gives Dorian its kind of characteristic sound, is that raised sixth. Then we have the flat 7, which is B flat. And again, that's your minor seventh, and then back to the root of C, or the octave in this case. So flat 3 and flat 7 for the Dorian sound. Mode 3 is the Phrygian scale. This one is going to have a flat 2, so D flat, the same minor third, or flat 3. F is our fourth, or our normal fourth. Then our normal fifth. Then also a flat 6. Then a flat 7, just like Dorian. And then back to your root again. So the characteristics of Phrygian is mainly that flat 2. So it's a minor scale with a flat 6 and a flat 2. Our fourth mode is Lydian. Lydian has a sharp 4. So this one is going to be just like the major scale. So your raised third there. Then our raised fourth, so F sharp instead of F natural. F sharp for Lydian. Then our normal fifth, normal sixth, normal seventh, or major seventh. And then back to the root again. So again, it's like your normal major scale, but with that raised 4. Our fifth mode is Mixolydian. This one is going to be the primary scale you hear played over your normal dominant seventh chords. So again, it's going to be just like the major scale for the first 6 notes this time, but the flat 7 instead of the major 7. So the only note that's different there is our B flat. So again, just like the major scale, but flat 7 for Mixolydian. Aeolian is your 6th mode, and this is also the natural minor scale. So Ionian is your natural major scale. Aeolian is your natural minor scale. So this one, again, it's going to have the same root, the same second note, then a flat 3, natural 4, natural 5, flat 6, flat 7, and then again the root or the octave. So the difference between Aeolian, or the 6th mode, and Dorian, the 2nd mode, where I said they're both minor scales, is the 6th. So Aeolian is your flat 6, Dorian major 6, and everything else is the same between those two scales. So again, Aeolian, flat 6. So Locrian is our last mode, our 7th mode. Again, Locrian has a flat 2, flat 3, our natural 4, flat 5. So that's what differentiates it from Phrygian. There is our flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. And then finally our root again. So this one, again, flat 2, flat 3, flat our natural fourth, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, and then our root. This is the scale that you'll hear played over half diminished chords, or our minor 2 chord in a minor key. Okay, there's 2 more scales that we're going to discuss, and these 2 are exclusively talking about 5 chords in a minor key. So in a minor key, the 5 chord is usually altered in some way. So like that sharp 5 or flat 13 sound that we were talking about in the first video discussing chords, or the sharp 9 off the 5th string. Those are called altered dominant chords. And what that means is that it's a dominant 7th chord with some kind of alteration to it. So in this case, with the G root, it's raising the 5th or lowering the 13th. So these 2 scales will address those alterations in one way or another. The first scale we're going to talk about is the half-whole diminished scale. There's actually 2 diminished scales. There's a half-whole and a whole half. The half-whole has a half step first, and then a whole step, or 1 fret on guitar and then 2 frets, and then you repeat that pattern. So 1 fret and then 2, and 1, 2. You can go 1 string at a time like that, or you can go up and down vertically. The whole half is the other, or the opposite of that. So it has the whole step first and then the half step, and it continues that scale. We're going to be discussing the one with the half step first, so the half whole diminished. And this scale with our G root here will give you a flat 9 or A flat, a sharp 9 or B flat, our major third, which is B natural, sharp 4, so that's C sharp, our natural 5th of D, the 13th or the normal 13th of E, and then your flat 7 or dominant 7th of F, and then you're back to the root again. If you were counting, you may have noticed this is an 8-note scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you're back to where you started again. That makes it what's called a symmetrical scale. But also to notice, you have every alteration except it has a natural 13th. That's what's going to differentiate this scale from the next scale we're going to talk about. So over an altered dominant chord, if it has a natural 13th, so like for example, this chord, it's a G7 with a 13th but a flat 9, that would be the scale of choice. So you can kind of hear how that matches. The other scale we're going to discuss has a couple different names. The way that I refer to it is the altered scale. It's also called the diminished whole tone scale. But what it actually is the 7th mode of melodic minor. And either way you think about it, it will give you the same notes. But in this case, it's going to be G as your root. Again, you get the flat 9 of A flat, the sharp 9 of B flat, the major third of B natural, the sharp 11 of C sharp. But then we also have a sharp 5 or a flat 13 of either D sharp or E flat. Then our flat 7 of F, and then our root again. So this one again is only a 7-note scale. Oh, sorry. And right there, the flat 13 or the sharp 5 is what is different about it between this one. And then again, your flat 7 and root. So this one, if we have a sharp 5 dominant chord, or any kind of combination of those alterations that includes either a flat 13 or a sharp 5, this is the scale to go to. Okay, so applying these, we're going to apply the Dorian scale to the 2 chord in a major key. In this case, it's going to be D Dorian, so off the 5th fret. Mixolydian for the 5 chord. That'll be G in this case. And then Ionian for our 1 chord. And that's C in this case. So everything's staying within the key. So D minor is Dorian. G7 is Mixolydian. C major is Ionian. So that's going to sound like this when you put it against the chords. Do it one more time. So again, Dorian for 2 chord. Mixolydian for 5. Ionian for your 1 chord. Again, that's all in a major key or a major 2-5-1 sense. Okay, now if you want to play the chords along with this scenario, our 2 chord, you're going to use the minor 9 voicing on the 5th string. And we're going to play it on the D root or on the 5th fret of the 5th string. The G chord, since it's our 5 chord, is going to be a dominant 13th voicing on the 6th string. And then our 1 chord is C, and that's going to be a major 7th. And that'll be the 3rd fret on the 5th string. So again, D minor 9 for our 2 chord. G13 for our 5 chord. C major 7 for our 1 chord. Now remember, in a minor key, things are a little bit different. So your 2 chord now, instead of being a normal minor chord, is half diminished. So it has that flat 5. So we're going to use the Locrian scale for that one, just to accommodate that flat 5. The 5 chord is an altered chord of some kind, still dominant but altered. So we're going to use the altered scale in this case because the voicing has a sharp 5 or flat 13. And then our 1 chord now is minor rather than major, so we're going to use the Dorian minor scale. Again, Locrian, it's altered to Dorian. That'll sound like this. Again, one more time. Locrian for D. Altered for G. Dorian, C minor. Then again, if we want to play the chords for the minor setting, our 2 chord now becomes half diminished. So it's still the 5th fret of D for the root, but now we need that minor 7 with a flat 5 voicing. Our G7 with the flat 13 or sharp 5 for our altered dominant sound. And then again, C minor 9 for our 1 chord in the minor setting. So again, half diminished 2 chord, altered 5 chord, minor 1. Okay, everyone, thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something out of it. Again, this will be a 2-part series on the introduction to jazz theory. So part 2 will be on more common chord progressions and how to apply them in more of a jazz context as well. So again, you can go to my website, www.joshuaparkermusic.com, and download a free PDF of everything we've discussed in this video, as well as the other lesson videos I've done so far on my channel, and the ones in the future as they'll come out. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, because that's really helping me out a whole lot, and we're almost to 100 subscribers at this point, so y'all are awesome. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. See you later.